I would never consider someone like you as family. Just get out of my house and don't ever come back." My mother-in-law's voice pierced through my protests, her anger unwavering as she made it clear that reconciliation was off the table. All I had ever wanted was to find common ground with her and truly belong in the family. Why couldn't she see how I felt? If this continued, I had my own plans. One day she would regret not accepting me. My name is Abby, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. I met my husband at work, and our love blossomed, leading to our marriage. I admired his diligent nature, and after we tied the knot, I chose to embrace my role as a homemaker. As he had hoped, my colleagues even threw a farewell party for me, celebrating my decision to leave our shared workplace. With many mutual friends attending our wedding, it felt like a day blessed by everyone around us. The joy radiating from our loved ones fueled my desire to create a happy home with my husband. My husband lost his father at a young age, leaving only his mother and the rest of his family behind. I hold immense respect for my mother-in-law, who raised her son alone. As I stepped into this new family, I wanted to express my gratitude to her, but forging a true bond proved to be more challenging than I anticipated. Before the wedding, we had met, but I felt it was important to formally visit her home. When we rang the doorbell, she welcomed us inside with warmth. We enjoyed snacks and chatted about life's ups and downs. My mother-in-law listened attentively to our concerns, and I found comfort in her genuine interest. She seemed every bit the remarkable woman who had raised my husband. "Can I speak with you alone for a moment? I'd like to have a woman-to-woman talk," she said. After her request, my husband excused himself, saying he'd go out for some shopping. This was my first opportunity to be alone with her. Until then, I had relied on my husband's presence to navigate our conversations, but now, faced with her alone, I felt a wave of anxiety. Sensing my discomfort, my mother-in-law smiled and began, "Abby, I see you're trying hard to fit into our family, but it's in vain." My heart sank at her unexpected words. She maintained her gentle smile, but her tone was anything but warm. Seeing my bewilderment, she burst into laughter. "You're so naive, Abby. Let me be clear, I don't accept you as family. I allowed my son to marry you because he insisted, but the idea of being related to someone like you is repugnant. I'll pretend to accept you in front of him since he truly believes you're family, but don't think for a second that I'll ever welcome you into my heart." The woman I had met before the wedding had seemed so kind and admirable for raising her son alone. This revelation shattered my hopes. I had been eager to put in the effort to bond with her, but if the cornerstone of this family refused to accept me, what could I do? The wall that had risen between us was daunting, yet, I was unaware of the depths of the challenges that lay ahead. Even after such a harsh rejection, I refused to give up. Our journey together had just begun, and perhaps we simply hadn't taken the time to understand one another. With this thought in mind, I tried to carve out time with my husband on weekends while actively seeking opportunities to spend time with my mother-in-law during the weekdays. As a housewife, visiting her daily was a daunting task, but it felt trivial compared to my goal of becoming a true part of the family. I diligently completed my household chores before heading to her home to help with hers. Cooking had always been my forte, so I often prepared meals for her. Initially, she would offer a simple, "not bad," and eat what I made, but as I continued to cook for her day after day, I sensed a shift in her attitude. One day, I prepared a cream stew for my mother-in-law, inspired by the rich flavors my own mother used to perfect. I took pride in this dish, hoping it would bridge the gap between us. As usual, my mother-in-law began eating, her expression tinged with discontent, but today felt different. Her usual scorn was noticeably absent. Concerned, I approached her, only for her to suddenly grab the plate and hurl its contents at me. The scalding stew hit me, bringing an immediate wave of heat and pain. I dashed to the kitchen to cool the burn, while my mother-in-law cackled at my distress. "Coming here every day, just like that? How shameless can you be? Did you really think you could win my favor with this? Let me be clear, my mind will never change. I will never accept you as family, no matter how delicious you think your cooking is." And today's stew? It was worse than usual. "Your cooking isn't good to begin with, but today's was simply awful. If you're going to serve me this slop, don't bother coming back." The heat, the pain, and her harsh words left me feeling utterly overwhelmed. My mind went blank. What should I have done? What could I have done? My mother-in-law watched my stunned expression, a sneer on her face, showing no sign of compassion, only delight in my humiliation. All I wanted was to forge a connection with her, to become part of her family. Was that such a small wish? The path ahead felt obscured by thick fog. Despite my uncertainty, I refused to give up. I continued to return to her house, despite her relentless insults. Over time, I grew accustomed to her venomous words. I apologized repeatedly, laid bare my feelings, and did all the housework I could, clinging to the hope that one day she might accept me. The routines that had once felt familiar since our marriage became an unbearable struggle without a clear goal. Yet, I persevered. That day, as I prepared myself for another round of her vitriol, my mother-in-law unleashed another barrage of cruel words. there's no way I could ever accept someone like you as family. Just leave and don't come back." In her fury, she grabbed a trash bag and flung it over me with all her might. "You're nothing but trash, a stain on my life. My son and I would have been happier if we'd never crossed paths." Her words struck deep, making it hard to breathe. The weight of the trash bag only added to my suffocation. I could no longer endure her insults and ridicule. All I wanted was to be part of her family. Why couldn't we find a way to be a family? No matter how hard I tried. I tried everything, but it felt futile. No matter how hard I worked to build a connection, it seemed all my efforts were in vain. Maybe my mother-in-law and I would never find common ground. As I fled her house, gazing up at the clear sky, I felt foolish. What had all my hard work been for? Had I been putting in unnecessary effort all along? Was I enduring this pain just to try and understand someone like her? I must be incredibly naive. Anger bubbled up inside me towards my mother-in-law, who had manipulated my feelings and unleashed her wrath without a second thought. She had used me as a punching bag for her own frustrations, and the urge to make her suffer in return surged within me. Fueled by that anger, I rushed home. Just as I stepped through the door, my phone rang insistently. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. It was a major hospital. Confused, I listened as they informed me that my mother-in-law had been taken there by ambulance after a violent outburst. She had fallen and hit her head, and a neighbor, alarmed by the noise, had called for help, finding her unconscious. "Could you come to the hospital immediately?" the paramedics asked. I replied coolly, "I'm sorry, but I can't. She's not my family. I'll inform her son to go later." The paramedic hesitated, but I brushed it off and hung up. Typically, a wife would rush to the hospital, but my mother-in-law had made it abundantly clear that she rejected me as family. I had tried my best to fit in, but if she refused to accept me, then the kindest thing I could do was stay away. It felt a bit vindictive, but it was my small act of defiance. The thought of her suffering sent a thrill through me. Later that evening, my husband went to the hospital after work. The doctor informed him that my mother-in-law's fall had caused brain damage, leaving her unable to move her body but still capable of communication. "Abby, please help me," my mother-in-law pleaded over the phone. I shot back, "Why would I care for someone who isn't family?" There was silence on the other end. My husband was oblivious to the situation, so I secretly shared the recordings of my conversations with my mother-in-law. He apologized for not noticing sooner and agreed to place her in a care facility. "I'm really sorry, I didn't realize. I'll make sure Mom reflects on her actions. You don't have to worry about her. I'll handle it," he assured me. I quietly accepted his offer, grateful for his support. He continued to apologize for his lack of awareness, but as a family man who often helped with household chores, I understood. "I don't want to care for someone who isn't family. Am I terrible for that?" I asked him. He smiled gently and replied, "No, it's impossible to devote yourself to someone who isn't family." His words brought me relief. While I didn't have many good memories with my mother-in-law, meeting my husband had undoubtedly been a blessing. "What's going on? Not even willing to take care of your mother-in-law?" One weekday afternoon, enjoying a rare moment of peace since I had stopped visiting her, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. As soon as I answered, she began yelling, calling me a failure and heartless. "Are you really saying that you would care for someone who isn't family?" I retorted. This only infuriated her further. "She must still be in the hospital. Her behavior is extremely bothersome to the other patients. My mother-in-law only causes trouble wherever she goes." I sighed in exasperation. "We've already discussed this with your son. The decision is final, so you need to accept it. We're not family, so I cannot help," she raged on, but I tuned her out and hung up. In the background, I could hear a nurse scolding her. My mother-in-law was just a source of chaos and emotional burden. She was getting the response she deserved. When my mother-in-law was discharged, as arranged with my husband, she was admitted to a care facility. On the day of her release, I decided to visit her. As soon as she spotted me, she shouted, "You thief!" My husband sighed, and I could tell he was beginning to understand the severity of the situation after hearing only second-hand accounts before. He apologized again, but instead of feeling burdened, I felt grateful. I knew I wouldn't have to endure the stress of my mother-in-law's outbursts any longer. However, it seemed her disruptive behavior followed her to the care facility. She hurled insults at other residents and complained incessantly to the staff, quickly earning a reputation as a problem resident. My husband started looking for a cheaper facility in anticipation of her potential eviction. Recognizing the toll her behavior was taking on him, I decided to help him search for alternatives. As expected, my mother-in-law was soon forcibly evicted from the first care facility, and my husband had no choice but to place her in a lower-ranked one. Previously, she had lived in a well-equipped place, but now she was in a dreary facility out in the countryside. My mother-in-law continued to complain relentlessly, but we were the ones footing the bill. She should have felt grateful for any care at all. Yet, I doubted she was capable of gratitude. One quiet day, I received a call from her. Just hearing her voice, I could tell she was at her breaking point. Please, let's start over. I truly regret how I treated you. You are my precious family. I feel it's not too late. Her tone was subdued, revealing the harshness of her current environment, but the treatment I endured from her had been far worse. I had tried so many times, and it had all been for nothing. One apology couldn't erase years of resentment. I can never accept you as family, Chloe, so please give up. With that, I hung up and blocked her number. She was a stranger to me now, and I didn't want to be bothered by her anymore. Despite the tension, my husband didn't criticize my decision. Instead, he agreed that it was the right choice. He apologized for not noticing the situation sooner and was committed to working through this together as a couple. I had taken someone very important from his life, so I wanted to do everything I could for his happiness. I was determined to find out what would bring us both joy, willing to do whatever it took to create a brighter future together.